Cormac, tell me how you got into professional services and financial services in particular.
Back in the 80s, coming out of college, there wasn't too many job opportunities in Ireland, so I trained as an accountant, an auditor. But then an interesting thing happened in the early 1990s, which was the creation of the International Financial Services Centre. Suddenly there was German, Italian, Japanese, American banks arriving into Dublin, and they were talking a language that people in Dublin weren't used to. I kind of, took the initiative really of just saying, look, I think this is interesting. I actually flew to London, went to a bookshop in the financial services area and bought a whole load of books and started reading up and trying to understand what these businesses were around. And I just kind of became the go-to person for this emerging financial services industry that was arriving into Ireland. So that was kind of that wave of the IFSC. I guess the interesting thing then was Enron in terms of, the collapse of the global economy at that time, back in the late 1990s. And Sarbanes-Oxley became a big issue. We started to do more work with the regulator. We started to do more work with the domestic banks. So really that's how I got into financial services.
What does financial services and EY mean?
So the interesting thing for me in terms of EY and financial services is that we approach it very much on a global basis. So there is this thing called the Global Financial Services Office that if you work in financial services, you're very much part of. And at a European level, it was incredibly timely because that was created actually just around the time of the more recent financial crisis in Europe around 2008. So at the same time as our global banking system was collapsing, EY was creating the FSO in Europe. So people like me who worked predominantly in financial services became part of a very global financial services organisation trying to help our global organisations figure their way through this crisis. Ended up working for about 8 months in the central bank just after the government guarantee was put in place. So really it was fantastic at that time to have very much a front row seat in terms of seeing how the European central banks and the European Commission, ultimately the Troika with the IMF, tried to manage the whole financial services situation and really to avoid the bankruptcy of individual sovereigns like Ireland and Italy and Portugal and Spain, and also to keep the euro together.
Cormac, you've told us about EY's structure and how that's helped in the crisis. Can you expand on that?
Very interesting, two things happening at the same time. You've got the financial crisis going on globally. I'm down at the central bank on secondment. Meanwhile, EY is creating this very unusual and completely different from our peer organisations financial services office. Come back into EY and central bank is looking for lots of help because of the whole Troika involvement in the Irish economy. So we really worked the structure in that lots of people from our UK, French, German, Italian practices got very interested in what was going on in Ireland. So we were really relentless about leveraging the capability across this financial services office, where you've got 30,000 people specialising in financial services. So really looking to bring all of that knowledge into the central bank on the first hand in terms of helping them to do a whole series of what was called asset quality reviews. The initial phase that resulted in NAMA being created, there was a realisation after that really that wasn't going to be enough to sort out the issue. So you had 3 subsequent assessments of the balance sheets. So we were involved in helping the central bank do all that. And indeed, the methodology we developed with the central bank on that was then used in places like Portugal, Spain and Italy in subsequent years. Following the exit of the Troika, it was about turning to the financial institutions themselves who were still struggling in terms of what their proposition was, what the right level of capital was, what the right level of infrastructure was, and again leveraging that FSO into our financial services clients in Ireland. So what we say is the FSO and our local relationships, particularly with the central bank, can help our financial services clients to have a constructive relationship with the regulator. And that's obviously playing now into the Brexit conversation because we've got new banks like Barclays and Bank of America moving really significant operations into Dublin from London to service their Eurozone clients. And again, our proposition to them is if you want to have a constructive relationship with the regulator and get your approval and get the infrastructure built to regulatory expectations, we're the ones to help you with that.